The house was in chaos, gunshots everywhere, echoing in the once calm neighborhood. Daniel's grip on Adenike had tightened as he pulled her through the hallway. His eyes were wild, filled with fear as the sound of intruders crashing through the front door rang out. "Nikki, we have to go, now," Daniel shouted, his voice frantic. He led her through hidden staircase, and they descended into the basement. Adenike could feel the tremble in his hand, though he tried to hide it. But she knew that he was just as scared as she was. The distant echoes of footsteps grew louder. The intruders had breached the front door and they were searching the house. Adenike's heart raced. Every second counted. She couldn't stop thinking about how close they were to being caught and how Daniel had been so determined to keep her safe. "Stay close," Daniel whispered, trying to sound calm, though his voice betrayed him. She held on to him tightly, her chest heavy with fear and adrenaline. As they reached the back door, they bolted out into the alley. The darkness of the night seemed to swallow them whole. They ran, weaving through the narrow streets. Adenike's breath came in short bursts, her legs burning from the effort. But Daniel kept her going, his voice steady though strained, urging her on. "We are almost there," he said, glancing behind them. Adenike could hear the footsteps of the men chasing them. The sound was deafening. A sudden sharp gunshot shattered the air. Adenike screamed as Daniel fell to the ground, his hand clutching his side. Blood seeped through his oversized t-shirt, staining it with dark red. "Daniel!" she cried, rushing to his side, her hands trembling as she tried to stop the bleeding. "Go," he gasped, his voice weak. "Nikki, run. Don't stop. Please leave." His grip on her had loosened, and before she could protest, he shoved her towards an opening in the alley. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't have time to mourn. She didn't have time to think. The sound of more gunfire rang out behind her, but she kept running, feeling her heart pounding in her chest. She didn't know where she was going to, but she couldn't stop. Luckily, she saw a cab and asked him to drop her at her house. Later, when she reached the safety of her house, she locked herself in and collapsed. Her thoughts were blur. That night felt like a bad dream, a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She prayed in her heart that Daniel would survive, but deep down, she feared for the worst. The next day, Adenike could still hear the gunshots in her head. She couldn't shake the images, the blood, Daniel's face, the feeling of helplessness. It had been weeks since the incident, but the trauma lingered, weighing her down. She had gone off social media to avoid questions, the speculations, the constant reminder of her old life. Her fans had noticed her absence, but there was little she could do to explain herself. The pain was too severe. Her mother, Adenike, kept calling, offering her support, urging her to heal. But Adenike wasn't sure how to heal. She felt like a shadow of herself, drained physically and emotionally. In an attempt to start fresh, she left Lagos and traveled to Abuja, hoping the change of scenery would help. The lavish hotels and expensive restaurants in the city didn't provide the comfort she hoped for, but the distraction was better than sitting alone with her thoughts. While having breakfast in a cafe one morning, she met Senator Felix. He was older, suave and charming, his aura one of confidence and power. They exchanged pleasantries, and he handed her a business card. Adenike wasn't interested in older men, but she could sense that Felix was different. Her new friend in Abuja, Zainab, encouraged her to be open to Felix's advances. The dynamics are different here, Zainab explained. Abuja is not Lagos. Women here don't mind dating older men, especially politicians. You want to survive, right? Zainab's words stuck with her. She wasn't sure why, but the idea of being cared for or having someone powerful protect her felt like an easy escape from the haunting memories of Daniel. Felix began to shower her with gifts, expensive jewelries, designer bags, weekend getaways. He was always kind, always attentive, but something about him didn't sit right with her. Still, she let herself to enjoy the luxury, something she hadn't known in a long while. Then one day, Felix surprised her with a gift, a house in Asokoro, a posh area of Abuja. And along with it, he handed her the keys to a Range Rover Sport. Adenike felt overwhelmed with gratitude, but deep down, she couldn't shake the emptiness inside. Despite everything Felix had given her, it wasn't enough to fill the void left by Daniel's absence. When she logged into her social media after months of silence, the first post she saw was from Daniel's friends. It read simply, "RIP, Young Money." Her heart sank. She stared at the screen, unable to comprehend the words. Daniel was gone. The trauma of that night came rushing back, and the tears flowed freely. She thought about their times together, the love, the gifts, the happiness. It felt like a different life, one that no longer existed. Her mother, always the voice of reason, called her, "Nike, I know this is hard, but you have to move on. Daniel's death is just a phase. It will pass, I promise." Adenike nodded silently. She couldn't bring herself to return to Lagos, not with all the memories. The house, the car, she couldn't keep them. It would only bring more pain. She told her mom to move into her house and drive the car Daniel bought for her, that she wouldn't be needing them anytime soon. She also decided not to return to her old life, to stay away from the public eye. Felix's gifts kept coming, more clothes, more jewelries, more lavish weekends. But Adenike couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was wrong. He treated her well, but his temper was quick to flare, especially when she pushed back on anything. He was used to control, to getting what he wanted, and she was beginning to feel like a prize in his arm, not a partner. But it wasn't just Felix. Madame Gladys, his wife, was a constant thorn in her side. She was influential, well-connected, and had no patience for young women who tried to infiltrate her world. Adenike could feel the hostility, the way Felix had to keep her as secret. It was clear that their relationship could never go public. Felix's political career depended on it. Adenike could only smile and nod, but the luxury began to feel like a cage. She missed the simplicity of her old life, even with its imperfection. She missed Daniel. One night, while they were together, Felix mentioned his wife's suspicion. She had been asking questions, and it was only a matter of time before things went public. Felix's temper flared, and Adenike began to feel suffocated. She longed for freedom, but knew the price would be too stiff. Her mother kept calling, urging her not to give up, not to let Daniel's death define her. But Adenike wasn't sure who she was anymore. She had money, luxury, and a man who showered her with gifts, but none of it filled the hole in her heart. Things came to a head when Madame Gladys found out about Adenike and Felix's relationship. Furious, she sent thugs to confront Adenike. They beat her mercilessly and threw her out of the house, stripping her of everything Felix had given her. The house, the cars, the jewelries, all of it was gone. And with it, the life she has built. It was later she realized that the house and cars was not even bought in her name. Adenike was bruised and broken, both inside and outside. The beating from Madame Gladys' talk had left her physically battered, her body sore, and her spirit crushed. She had been thrown out of the house like a trash, and Felix's betrayal stung like salt in an open wound. She had nothing now. Not the house, not the car, not even her dignity. She stumbled through the streets, aimlessly wandering, the weight of everything pushing her down. Her head spun with the thoughts of Daniel, Felix, the house, the endless circle of betrayal. But before the darkness could swallow her, a hand reached out. Hey, are you okay? A deep voice pulled her from her dazed state. She looked up, blurry-eyed, to see a man standing over her. His face was kind and his voice was warm, though his expression was filled with concern. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a simple t-shirt and jeans. He had the kind of face that radiated calmness, something Adenike had not felt in days. Can I help you? He asked gently. Adenike did not know what to say. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Her throat was dry, and the weight of everything came crashing back. She collapsed against him, unable to hold herself up anymore. I'm taking you to the hospital, he said firmly, without giving her a chance to argue. You need help. Adenike didn't have the strength to protest. She let him guide her to a nearby car, and they drove to a small hospital on the outskirts of the city. At the hospital, the staff treated her with care, patching up her bruises and cleaning the cuts. She was exhausted, both physically and emotionally. The doctor told her she would need rest, but Adenike's mind was elsewhere. She kept thinking about how everything had fallen apart so quickly. The man, Olumide, he introduced himself as stayed with her the entire time. He sat in the waiting room reading a magazine while she rested. When the doctors released her, Olumide was there to take her home, but there was no home. Not for her anymore. She didn't have anywhere to go to. No one left to turn to. Stay with me for a while, Olumide offered, his tone calm but insistent. I live alone, and you do not need to be on your own right now. You can rest until you figure out things. Adenike hesitated. She didn't know him, but something about the way he spoke, his quiet kindness, made her feel safe. Maybe, for the first time in weeks, she could breathe. Olumide's apartment was modest, small but cozy. He made her tea and gave her the space to rest. There was no grand gestures, no fancy dinners, just a kind man offering comfort in the most basic yet meaningful way. Adenike spent the next few days recovering. She took long walks around Olumide's neighborhood, breathing in the fresh air. Olumide wasn't just a stranger who had helped her. He was someone who seemed to genuinely care about her well-being. One evening after dinner, Olumide asked, "So what's next for you? Do you have any plan?" Adenike stared at an empty plate. She had no plan, no direction. She couldn't go back to Lagos, not with everything that had happened. She couldn't face the public eye, and she couldn't face the shame of it all. "I don't know," she replied softly. "I don't know where to go from here." Olumide was quiet for a moment, his eyes kind. "Well, you're not alone. You'll figure it out, and I'm here to help in whatever way I can." Adenike didn't say anything, but she appreciated his words. Over the next few weeks, Adenike stayed with Olumide. She wasn't ready to go anywhere else, not yet. Olumide didn't ask questions about her past. He let her heal in her own time, and for that she was grateful. They began spending more time together. They would go for walks in the park, have quiet dinners at his place, and talk about everything and nothing. It wasn't romantic at first, just companionship, an understanding between two people who had been through different kinds of pain. One night, after a long walk, they sat on the balcony of his apartment, watching the stars. Adenike felt something shift in her chest. She had spent so long avoiding emotional connections, afraid of what might happen if he had let someone in again. But with Olumide, it was different. She didn't feel judged or pressured. She felt like she could finally breathe again. "I don't want to be alone anymore," she admitted softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Olumide turned to her, his eyes soft. "You don't have to be." It was in the moment of that she realized she had found something she hadn't thought was possible anymore: hope. Just as Adenike was beginning to feel like her life might finally have some normalcy, the past came crashing back. Olajide, her former lover, the man who had left her scarred emotionally and physically, was back in her life. He had been released from prison after a state pardon. At first, she had hoped he would move on, that his obsession with her would have faded. But when she received a message from an unknown number, her stomach twisted. The message was simple: "I know where you are and I'm coming for you." A cold shiver ran down her spine. Olajide had never let her go. His obsession has deepened in the years since they parted ways, and now he was determined to find her. Adenike confided in Olumide, her voice trembling. She had tried to protect him from the truth, but now it was all spilling out. Olumide didn't hesitate. "We'll deal with this together," he said, his tone firm, unwavering. He didn't show any fear, only a quiet determination to protect her. But the stress of Olajide's talking began to take its toll. Adenike noticed how tense Olumide became when they went out in public. He watched over his shoulders as if expecting Olajide to show up at any moment. They couldn't go anywhere without feeling like they were being watched. The pressure started to strain their relationship. Olumide's protective nature became possessiveness, and Adenike started to feel like a prisoner in her own life. The constant worry about Olajide's overshadowed everything else. One evening, after a particular tense day, Olumide finally snapped. "I can't keep living like this, Nike," he shouted, his voice filled with frustration. "I don't know what you want from me anymore. I'm doing everything I can to protect you, but this is too much." Adenike felt a pang in her heart. She hadn't meant to hurt him, but she understood his frustration. She had brought chaos into his life, and now it was tearing them apart. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to bring you danger." Olumide took a deep breath, running a hand through his hair. "I just don't know how much longer I can handle this. If you want me to keep protecting you, I will, but we can't keep living in fear." Olumide ended their relationship, telling Adenike he couldn't continue living in fear and uncertainty. "Maybe one day, things will be different," he said softly, his eyes filled with regret. "But right now, I need to move on. I need peace in my life." Adenike felt the pain of losing him, but deep down, she knew it was the only choice left. Olajide has destroyed everything good she had, and now she was truly alone again. The life she had tried to build with Olumide was over. With a heavy heart, Adenike knew she couldn't stay in the city any longer. She had to leave. She had to escape. Not just from Olajide, but from the life that had brought her nothing but pain. Nikki called her mom to inform her, but Adunni told her not to come back to Lagos because she was not ready to release the house or cars to her. It was later Adenike learned that her mom had asked a young lover to move in, and they were now staying together. The disappointment and betrayal was just too much. In the end, Adenike made the difficult decision to sell everything she had left and leave the country to a place where she would be far from all her problems. She had no choice but to disappear. She bought a one-way ticket to Qatar, hoping to start anew. Olajide was desperate to get back all Nikki owed him. He got wind of her traveling and was already at the airport in Abuja waiting to confront her. She traveled under a disguise, her face hidden by a hijab, as she entered the next chapter of her life. And although the scars from the past would never fully heal, she knew one thing for sure: this time, she would no longer be anyone's victim.